Hello guys, hey, Dave Pierce here again. Hey, as part of this series, I've shown you how to make a Pulk polling strap or a geared tow strap. Showed you how I rig my Pulk sled. I'm also going to show you how to make some Pulk polling poles. Say that 3 times real fast. So they're 1/2-inch fiberglass poles. They're about 6 feet long, but they end up longer when you put the connectors on the end. And the reason that I ended up designing and building these is that as I was using the poles that I had originally purchased from skipulk.com, the poles work great, by the way. They really do a great job. They're a solid product and I highly recommend them from those guys. But I needed a little bit of extra length. So my alpine touring skis, when I was pulling my Pulk with my chain brake on, my skis, the clips on the back of my skis kept getting fouled in my chain brake. And it took me a little while to figure it out. I kept getting my skin off the bottom of my ski stripped off on the back. But finally figured out that, hey, it was getting fouled in my chain brake. So I needed a little bit of extra length. I ended up figuring out how I could make some of my own that were a little bit longer, and they work great. So I'll show you how to make these so you can make your own poles if you want a little bit longer ones. If you're not using a chain brake and you're pulling out across the flat, like I said before, Ski Pulk makes some great poles. I also really like their harness. They do a good job. Nice people. I ended up sending in a question about adding some touch-up paint on my pole, and I got a call directly from Grant, the owner. So really nice people. So anyway, these poles, as you can see here, here's the original Ski Pulk ones that I got, and they're great poles. And then these are the ones that I ended up making, and they're quite a bit longer. That extra length was just what I needed. Since I started using those, I haven't got my clips fouled in my brake, so they work great. And haven't really suffered any setbacks in steerability of the sled. They track really well. The sled still tracks really well. I've even pulled double sleds with this and works well. So I've got some poles over here, and I'll give you a link where you can get these poles, and then I'll show you how you can make your own poles using these fiberglass rods. Alright, so let's talk about what we need to build these poles. So I've got 2 of these 1/2-inch by 6-foot rods. These come pre-tipped. If you buy UTV whips, they don't come pre-tipped. These are for electric fence. These are really reasonably priced. I like these a lot. I'll put the link to these below. You can also look for UTV whips for putting flags on your UTV. They have those in 1/2-inch. Those work great. That's what that set back there is. I can also put a link to that below. But these, I'm just going to saw this tip off, take that little bit off, and then these will still be pretty long. I think they'll be more than sufficient. Okay guys, here's the tools and materials that you'll need to make these poles. Got my hacksaw up here with a metal blade. I've got my drill motor, my drill bit for setting these 3/16 5/8 spring pins. I've got a mallet to drive those pins in, and then I have 2 5/16 18 eye bolts, and I've got these 2 3/8 ID by 3/8 24 tie rod ends, 2 3/8 24 all thread rod connectors, and 2 5/16 18 all thread rod connectors. You'll see that 3 of these I've already got filed down. This one I haven't yet. I kept it so I can show you what I do there. Then I have this 13 millimeter ID by 15 millimeter OD aluminum tube. My tube cutting tube cutter, and then I've got a permanent marker, a couple of these fiberglass rods, a tape measure, and then this marine weld, specially formulated. It works really well. These other poles I have taken a serious hit, and it held everything together, so I'm pretty impressed with the strength of this stuff. Anyway, that's what we need, and I'll show you how we go about making it. Okay, now we're going to mark this tube so that we can cut it. And one thing I wanted to mention, when you're cutting the tube, you're going to have to clean up the edges after you get done, but just go slow. So we need two 3-inch sections. Cut the first one, so get that right on your line there, and then we just start putting a little bit of pressure on it, go around a little bit more, and that's what I'm saying, take your time. Just add maybe a quarter turn each, a couple of times around. Just add a little bit more. And there it is, and you can see it's a little bit rough, so we'll clean that up in a minute. So there's our first 3-inch piece. Okay, there's our two 3-inch sections, and then we need two at 2.5. Okay, first one at 2.5. Okay, that's how much you'll have left over. Now, there's a couple ways you can clean this up. There's a little tool on the edge of here that you can use it to clean up that ID with, or you can get yourself a little deburring tool from the you can put in your drill bit. So either way you prefer, and that's how you get those ready. So here's option number 2 if you have it, a little chamfer tool, and it works pretty slick. We're just trying to clean up that inside edge that so if I check every one of those, they look great. And if I check them here, they'll slide on here. gonna have to dress that into that one a little bit. So they slide on there. And we'll be able to put some epoxy between there. It's like I need to file the edge of that off just a little bit to get that taper down a little bit. Okay, so these are ready to go. And that is just a throwaway. Okay, this is how we get those nuts round. I've got this edge of the flat facing up, clamped into a vise, and I'm just gonna start rounding that off. Okay, we've got it filed down enough now that it'll slip into the so now we'll epoxy them in place. Okay, now we're going to mix our epoxy. This is that JB Weld Marine Weld, and it's a 5-minute epoxy. And we're going to take the first end, and we are going to put a little bit of epoxy on the end of this shaft. And we're going to put some epoxy on right here. Now, as I put this in here, I'm putting it on this eye bolt just to make it easier to use. So I'm going to rotate and try and create a fillet. Push it in and out a little bit to get some good spread. Make sure that I'm getting good coverage in there. And I could probably use just a little bit more. I'll make sure that I have enough on there. Okay, I'm going to wipe that off with a paper towel. I'm going to just wipe that excess off. And I'm going to put this on the end of the shaft, and I'm going to rotate it around as well and try and get some good coverage. Okay, back in. Now there's my first one ready to go. So I'm going to remove this thread, and I've got to make sure I wipe all the epoxy off that and keep it clean. Or it won't want to thread very cleanly. Okay, so now we have our connector nuts epoxied into our aluminum tube, and the connector nuts and the aluminum tube are epoxied on the end of our fiberglass shafts. And so at this point we're going to let these sit and cure. I want these things to be fully cured before we do anything more with them. So we're going to let them sit overnight, and then tomorrow we'll use the spring pins to fix them onto the carbon fiber shafts again, or excuse me, to the fiberglass shafts, and they'll be ready to go. Then we can attach our ends to them. Okay guys, the ends have now finally cured, and so I've gone ahead and threaded my eye bolts in, as well as on the other end I have secured my tie rod ends. Clean that up just a little bit before we get going. Okay, we're going to dress up this hole, and then we will put the spring pin in. I'm just going to clean off that little bit right there and get that started in. And that's how it's done. So you just do the same thing on all 4 of these, and then your poles are finished.